Okay, is it going to come up? Yes. Okay, so as I said, welcome everybody to this member gathering. So we're going to be talking about policies and procedures and how to actually go through and get them done. We are recording this for future. If you can put in the chat who you are and where you're from, and also any questions as they come along, Alison will be and Ian will be monitoring the chat so that hopefully by the end we can cover them. Okay, so let me try and share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that screen now then? Yep. Okay. So as we were saying, we were trying to work out, so we know it's not a sexy subject, but everybody has to sort of look at it and bite the bullet at some stage. So this is what most people's reaction is when we start about talking about writing policies. Have you got your paperwork? Have you got your up-to-date records? So if this is you, you might be then thinking, okay, why should you bother about having some of these? So just as a bit of the background, really, obviously having policies and procedures in place do help support your staff and your volunteers on site. There are legal obligations, and what we're going to do later in this presentation is I've actually pulled off a lot of the information which is from sort of the government websites and things. So they are a bit heavy going on wording, so I won't be going through all the stuff there, but just to show you and highlight the sort of things that are required by law. You can also find that actually you need some of these policies in place to be able to access funding. For example, we run the summer holiday schemes, and a part of our holiday schemes, we require you to submit your safeguarding policies and your health and safety policies. So, they are some of the things, and there are other, a lot of the other funding, big organisations do require to have certain policies and procedures in place. It can help to reduce your insurance premium. So Jonathan will be covering that a bit later. And sometimes, yeah, it's just a case of being able to sleep at night, knowing that you actually are trying to protect everybody that is using your site that you're going through. Also, as a wider thing, from part of Social Farms and Gardens, we run what's called the Green Care Quality Mark for providers of green care. And you need policies and procedures in place. And if you go down that mark of applying for our quality mark, that helps to give the reassurance to those people, your stakeholders, your families, your friends, and all those sorts of things that you are running a safe and responsible site. And so that is one of the things that will, you
what
can
on
then.
earth are you doing?
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, so again, the Green Care Quality Mark is our quality assurance scheme, which helps you demonstrate that you are running a safe, responsible site. So, okay, so I've gone too far now. So, just need to keep moving. I have to keep hiding you all, I think. Okay, so first of all, when you look at it, we'll go on to what they say about health and safety. So these are extracts that have come from the government's website. So every business must have a health and safety policy. If you have more than 5 employees, then your health and safety policy must actually be written down and shared with all your employees. There is also a health and safety document. Oh, sorry, I've just gone in. Alison, are you able to keep omitting people? Do you see them on your screen?
I don't, but I'll look out for them.
Okay, no, so okay, I need to get to view this. I do apologize. I've now got seeing where people are. Let me just stop sharing for a moment because there's people in the waiting room and I need to obviously. Right, I need to do it as a smaller screen now. Okay, so does that now show you? Yep. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so with your health and safety policy, as I said, it needs to be written down, and a lot of people remember that you used to have a health and safety poster that used to always have to be displayed. You don't necessarily have to display that poster anymore, but you are supposed to provide your employees with the leaflet. The other thing to bear in mind that in most cases the government does talk about having um, volunteers they class as being employers in that sense. So just if you have in some of the instances when it talks about having more than 5 employees, it is talking about if you have that number of regular employers as well. Sorry, volunteers as well. So it is worth checking. So going on then to risk assessments is the next area. So there is a legal duty for you to have risk assessments when they are exposed whilst they're at work. When you're thinking about risk assessments, the other thing to talk about is there's the fire risk assessment. And when you look at the details on that, the responsible person is not just the employer, it could be the owner, the landlord, or the occupier. So just because you don't own your premises, you need to check whether this having a fire risk assessment is relevant to your organization, and also whether or not who is responsible. So they class it as talking about a responsible person. The other thing on the risk assessments is to talk about COSH as well. So this is where there's the hazardous substances. There are a lot of useful information, and I have links which I can send out afterwards about posters which show the hazardous symbols. So lots of things that you might not suspect to be on this list, you have to just take into consideration. I mean, even down to the fact that there's things like washing up liquid and hand sanitizer. If you get used to looking to the little symbols, which are sort of like red diamonds with different, like an exclamation mark and other symbols within it, they are the ones where you have to look to see whether or not you need a certain number of COSH risk assessments and COSH data sheets around them. So risk assessments is quite a big subject. So when you're talking about that, there can be different types of risk assessments that you need for your organization. So I've talked about fire risk assessments. Quite often insurance places and people coming to visit your site will be looking for your site risk assessment. So you're looking, this is about the pathways and the buildings and those sorts of angles of the risk assessment. If you are carrying out activities, so sometimes it might be the gardening activities and things like that, again, you have to look at whether or not the activity itself needs to be risk assessed. We've talked about COSH as being the hazardous substances. If you have to do a COSH risk assessment, there's normally a data sheet. But again, the government websites do have things like the standard template to use for these, and then you get the data sheets. When I was trying to do this, most of the data sheets are available by either emailing the if you look at the back of any bottle or labeling, there's normally a contact number there, but quite often if you Google your safety data sheet and the item, they are available to download straight away. If you've got animals on your site, then sometimes you're asked to risk assessment around the animals, about access to them, who uses them, what's the risks around there. And depending on who attends your site, you might be involved with personal risk assessments. So depending on where a person's come from or their background, they may come to you with a personal risk assessment, or you may be asked to create a risk assessment for that particular person. These are normally dealt with from the people who are coming to attend your site. If they're coming with a support worker or something like that, you should be asking to see asking if there is a personal risk assessment. So if they are maybe a flight risk, or they may be that they shouldn't be around sharps or things like that. You need to be able to see these personal risk assessments to make sure that your activity risk assessment and your site are suitable for them. And thinking back not too long ago, obviously we had the external factors that you might need a risk assessment. So obviously the big one that we thought about recently was COVID, and we were having to almost daily update risk assessments about COVID and how people can then access your site. If you go onto the government website, they do these templates which are available for you to download and complete. As you can see, it tells you to identify what the hazard is and how people might be harmed and what you are already doing about it. So these are working documents that you then outline what additional actions you're taking to control these and when they're going to be carried out. So you wouldn't expect to see everything actioned on this, but you would be expecting it to be a living document that is continually reviewed and updated. However, for smaller organisations, there are other types of templates that you can use. This is another extract from one of the people that have gone through the Green Care Quality Mark, and it was just to try and get you under the idea that actually it doesn't have to be a too complicated document. So from this one, you can see immediately if they're talking about, you start talking about gardening and then the activities involved around the gardening, and then, potentially what risks had happened and what could you do to protect people against the risk, and obviously give it some sort of rating so then people know, the level of risk with each activity. So you don't have to worry about it being too complicated. The information is just as long as you are thinking about all the potential risks around there and then showing and demonstrating what are you putting in place to try and mitigate against that risk. Safeguarding is another big area. So there is obviously legislation, which is some of the ones that are outlined there. There is different legislation that relates to safeguarding of children, as well as adults. And then if you are doing an activity which is classed by the government as being one of the regulated activities, then you need to be getting your staff and your volunteers DBS checked. So there's a whole link there about what you need to do. And then, as I said, having DBS checks for both staff and volunteers that may be working with any of the adults and children that are classed as being vulnerable. Safeguarding is probably one of the biggest areas that when people come through the Green Care Quality Mark scheme that we provide the most advice. So the general points we'd say is contact your local safeguarding board. In most areas, there is an adult and a separate child safeguarding board. Some of them are combined, most of them are separate. But have a look and find out whether they signpost you to some available templates for your policies. If not, then we recommend looking for other generic templates, and we always signpost to the NSPCC for children. And there's another charity called the Anne Craft Trust, which have a number of different templates. So you have to go and see what's the most suitable template for your organisation. And then they also have templates for their procedures to go around the safeguarding as well. We always recommend, I know when people are trying to do policies, you're trying to do probably as little, a small number of policies as possible. But when it comes to adults and children safeguarding, we strongly recommend that you keep these separate. The legislation is different between adults and children. The categories of abuse are different. The way you deal and report with if people have come up with allegations or disclosures is different for adults and children. So if you have a combined policy, it makes it very complicated to go through and try and make it a legible document, an easy read. So please try and keep them separate where you can. Try and keep up with terminology. Terminology does change. Things like the keeping children safe in education usually changes every September. And a number of years ago, the terminology vulnerable adult was replaced with adult at risk. This is one of the biggest things that we still see in adult safeguarding policies. And it's a clear indication then that that maybe that organization isn't as up to date and looking at the legislation and the changes. Another recent change, which was in, I think it was 2022, is the child abuse and peer on peer abuse. So they changed it from peer on peer abuse to child on child abuse. So those sorts of things, the legislation. If you deal with children's safeguarding, the NSPCC, you can subscribe to newsletters. And then when these updates come out annually, they do have very clear guidance and summaries of what the changes in the legislation mean. And the other thing that we find a lot of is with the designated safeguarding leads and the deputies, make sure they are named and make sure there is contact details in your safeguarding document. It's usually a public facing document, and therefore, if possible, they should be contact details that are potentially out of hours. So a mobile number is best. But as again, to have a deputy, the other thing we see a lot of is that the policies don't outline what to do if the allegation is against the safeguarding lead. So have a think about your organisation. What would happen if the allegation was against the safeguarding lead? You know, there are options if you have a director or a trustee who with the responsibility of safeguarding, you can direct them to those people and again provide contact details, or it may be that you direct them directly to the local authority designated officer, the LADO. So make it clear within your policy what happens if the issue is against the safeguarding lead. A few of the other things which are outlined on the government website. So insurance, obviously you need to have employer's liability. And again, this also you have to bear in mind if you have volunteers as well. There isn't actually a legal requirement for having public liability cover, but it's something that is normally in place for everyone because of the claims that could come against you. So, you know, normally we see that the employer's liability and the public liability are sort of similar levels. We have been finding that historically things have been going through. I think it's, Ian, was it 5 million that they're going through? But we're now finding that some stakeholders are asking for 10. Is that the... Oh, I can't see Ian. I don't know if he's still there, but we are noticing that some stakeholders are now coming through and asking people to increase the level of their cover. So it's always worth checking prior to your insurance renewals with your stakeholders to see if there's any changes in what they are requiring. First aid, yes, you have to have people trained in first aid. And again, this is when you're talking about workplaces with 5 people or more. Electrical equipment. So this used to be known as your PAT testing as well for portable equipment, which is now changed to EE, electrical equipment testing, EET. Again, there's not a time scale, but quite often in your insurance policies or places like that, they have an outline of how long it's supposed to be. Often, I think it's 5 years for the main electrical systems, and I think it's a couple of years for pat testing. And the other records to bear in mind that you need to keep is about accidents. So this is where we're talking about work-related accidents, if they would unfortunately happen on your premises, and then you need to be aware of the RIDDOR reporting structure for that. So where can you go when you start looking through all of these things that you need to produce? The HSE website do have a lot of templates to work through. And the other thing that we strongly recommend is the Green Care Quality Mark. We have just recently relaunched our framework document. So for those people that are preparing for the Green Care Quality Mark, or maybe not providing green care to commission services, but want to make sure that their documents and everything are robust, then you can apply free on our website to download the Green Care Quality Mark framework guidance. So that gives you the checklist of what's involved, but it also gives you access to a very comprehensive, about 40-page document, which provides a number of links to and signposting about what would be expected in these policies and where you can go and get support and advice. So you can go onto our website, follow it under quality assurance and the quality mark, and that will give you a link to download the framework. Your insurance company could also be a source of information, and Jonathan will be coming on to talk a bit later about that side of what sort of things are available via McClarrons. And you can also do your research. Some other green care providers and other community gardens and care farms and things do have their policies publicly available on their websites. If ever you are looking for them, other policies for inspiration, please remember that it is unique to your setting. So make sure when you're reviewing their document, you're going through there and applying it to your site and making those necessary changes. It wouldn't be the first time that we have documents submitted that when we're going through it reference another organisation because they've tried to do a search and replace and it's not worked successfully. But you have to, although they are a really good source of documents to avoid you having to start with a blank piece of paper, you do need to make sure that you are adapting each of the policies to be suitable for your setup and your organisation. The SF&G private Facebook members group is also another source of a great support. If you're not already a member, the latest newsletter that went out had a link to that one. And this is where quite a lot of questions are posed to other members, and then they can answer you directly, or they can put a general comment. So, I think there's over 3,000 members of that group now. And the other thing to put a call out to your own volunteers. You might be surprised about what skills and things they may have. You may find that some of your volunteers write some of these policies and do some of these things as part of their day job, and therefore would be willing to help as you're going through these. So, just be careful and just check that they have got the expertise to do it, and just, what they can do. But, thinking about that and thinking about any other member organisations that you may be linked to, and see what advice that they can give you. So what I will do now is pass over to change my screen if I can get the right one. Right, does that now show?
Yeah, I think we're good there, Denise.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Jonathan Copley from McClarrons Insurance Brokers. We've worked for social farms and gardens since 2019, so a number of years now, helping members with their insurance. And really on this topic, I don't want this to be a kind of used for sales. The purpose of this is to just show you how maybe some existing insurance policies you might have can help you gain access to some of the support, whether that be because you're going for the Green Care Quality Mark, or perhaps you are a new startup and looking to put some of these policies in place and wondering where you can potentially get some advice and where to look. So that's very much going to be the pitch from me, and hopefully there'll be some time for questions at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through one of the products that our sister company HB Underwriting developed called Rural Protect, because I think it's a really good example of how a policy can proactively support clients in some of the things we're talking about. And in order to give you a good idea, I'm going to need to take you through exactly what the policy is designed to do cover-wise as well, and then how it can link into the Green Care Quality Mark. And something else that we found, the Home Safely app as well, which is quite useful in terms of risk management. But it's not a sexy topic, like we know. Insurance, risk management, Green Care Quality Mark, it's all there to help demonstrate a well-run organization. We are finding more and more insurers now have an expectation that some of these policies and procedures are already in place. They might not ask the question up front, but they do usually have an expectation that these things are in place in the background, because if there was some form of claim, the normal process is a law firm will be approached and will be put on the claim, and they will be asking you to evidence some of this risk management being in place, because ultimately what the insurer wants to do is defend the claim and defend you as the client. But to do that, you've almost got to put yourself in the insurer's position and say, okay, well, what would the insurer want in order to defend us in this situation? And if there isn't any paperwork or there isn't the right things in place, it's going to be very hard to do that. So that's just the angle from the insurer's front. Okay, so the product I'm going to talk about a little bit today is called Rural Protect. And what Rural Protect is, it's a specialist management liability policy that's been created for the rural sector. And what this policy does, it provides 3 sections of cover. Directors and officers, or trustee indemnity, is the first one. So that protects individual directors, employees, volunteers, if a claim were to come against them personally for a negligent act, error, or omission in the running or operation of the organization. The second strand of cover is company legal liability. Now, instead of protecting the individual directors or volunteers, this will actually protect the organization's entity. So usually either limited company name, the CIC's name, the charity name, whatever it might be. And with these 2 covers, what we typically find is they protect against regulatory investigations. Those tend to be where they'll either go after an individual, or if a committee or group has made the decision as a whole, they could well go after the company entity. And the third coverage that comes on this policy is employment practices liability, which is completely optional to the organization. And that's covering more the employment law side of things. So employment contract disputes, things of that nature. Okay. Another policy you might be familiar with is commercial legal expenses. And there's a big crossover with employment practices and legal expenses, both covering those employment law options. But the critical differences with the Rural Protect product is there aren't some of the clauses within what you would find within legal expenses which invalidate claims, such as prospect of success or advice precedent clauses. So that's why we normally recommend Rural Protect to our clients over and above, because the likelihood of a claim being covered is much more realistic that claim is going to be covered under Rural Protect, and therefore the client outcome's better. Because Rural Protect is backed by a law firm, any advice that you get is fully protected by legal privilege, and it protects against all UK regulators, and that's including HSE. And if you know about HSE charge a fee for intervention, which is £174 per hour. So if HSE felt there was a material breach and that inspector thinks it's serious enough that they need to write to the organisation and certain actions need to be taken, they can be charging you £174 per hour, which can quickly rack up. And this policy will protect those costs. And obviously SF&G members as well, as usual, get a negotiated discounted rate, which is always a good benefit to have. So the need for Rural Protect, really, the number of UK regulators, which is staggering. There's over 96 regulators in the UK. Prize goes out to anyone who can name them all on the webinar. But and some of them are really surprising as well, because we forget things like police, fire officers, as well as Environment Agency, HSE. There's a ton of them out there that do expect you to have policies, procedures in place. We do see a high volume as well of employment-related claims, and that's including volunteers. It's a very high volume we see that comes in, and we do see more clients wanting more and more advice in the employment law side of things, especially those organizations who are smaller organizations. They maybe don't have a HR team or department or anything of that nature in place. So policies like Rural Protect, giving you access to support for employment-related situations is very useful. Challenging economic circumstances, definitely, we're all feeling the pinch in many different ways, but what can happen with that is everyone's got their own scenarios, and that can raise more disputes, insolvency, fraud, tax issues, all things which regulators are involved in. And we've got some more detail down there in terms of the types of fines by the regulators at the bottom. Okay, so some of the unique solutions that Rural Protect will give clients is some of their digital tools. So Radar Legal is a service partner for Rural Protect. They're a litigation and commercial law firm. Now, they don't just specialize in the management of legal crisis, but their whole philosophy is about the education of customers and developing tools and resources to help clients who've got a policy in place to hopefully stop a claim happening. Ideally, if we can educate clients, give them resource, then in an ideal situation, the claim might not come to fruition, or lessons can be learned from situations and things can be put in place to mitigate the risk. Now, Radar as a law firm have developed some digital tools that clients get access to. One of them is Radar Station, which is an advisory web portal. It houses thousands of contractual templates that you can take advantage of. There is a phone and email advice line. So if you cannot locate what you need on the website, or if you need to do something quirky because of the types of activities you're running and it doesn't quite fit, you can speak to the team and get some advice as how to maybe you need to amend some of these documents. Maybe there's a gap in something he's creating. The beauty of it is the law firm keeps them all up to date. So everything on there is up to date with the latest legislation. Radar Grace is an unusual one in that it's technically a legal assistant, which is available via mobile app, which is you can ask a legal related question into it and it will come back with advice and some answers. And the final one is Radar Reports, which I think, Denise, you mentioned earlier about accident management and reporting. So this is a platform that you can record your slips, trips, falls, near misses, or major incidents, so that you can make sure it's recorded and in the right way, and it will prompt to, for you to evidence things in the right way as well. Okay, I'd give you some example of the types of advice and guidance you can get as well from the law firm. Tax issues. I'm not going to just read bullets, but the slides will be available. But commercial disputes, regulatory queries. It's always a popular one. Data information laws, another one, with cyber liability being a big talking point, especially if you're working with vulnerable people. And you are collecting data and information, if you're having things like care plans and things like that, where you're holding sensitive information, is always something that's of interest to people. I would also add employment law to that. You know, the rights of volunteers, the rights of employees, is always a hot topic for people as well. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but essentially at the point where you take out a policy, McClarrons will introduce you to Radar Legal. You'll get a log on for the web portal, and you will get a guide as to how to contact Radar. And the booklet will take you through very easy to use. The numbers will all be there for you to ring, and you'll have your policy number ready to deliver that to the team, whoever you're trying to contact. Okay, so in terms of the green quality mark, how does Raw Protect link into that? Well, it gives you proactive advice. If you're looking at it and think, yes, we need to do something like this for our organization, but you're thinking, where do I start? Well, a policy like this, I mean, that starts at £220, gives you access to the law firm and could help you put a lot of this stuff in place. So free legal advice, how to interpret the rules, make sure it's all correct. Also give you that security that you've spoken to a law firm as well. It's not necessarily left up to you to find what you can online and put together. You can get it checked. Radar send regular news updates and host webinars on topical legal matters for various sectors. Health and safety, protection of vulnerable adults and children, a couple of topics Denise mentioned quite heavily in her segment, and how to get that right. And I would say in terms of protection of vulnerable adults and children, again, that's an area of insurance whereby more and more insurers have expectations on things that should be in place, especially background checking. And some policies will have very strict protocol in place for you to follow on that front. So it's worth checking your policy documents if you are working with vulnerable adults and children, just to make sure you understand what the insurer's expectation is, because they might have a condition which expects you to do that for all staff or volunteers working with vulnerable people. So it's worth just double checking. We've mentioned access to templates, HR policies, how to interpret the rules and getting advice on how to manage that. And you can give various teams access to the various tools as well throughout your organization. So it doesn't just mean one person gets access to it. If you've got a number of individuals who want access, you can certainly give them all access, or limited access to certain functions depending on what their role is. Okay. Equally for your organization, it shows that you've chosen to ensure your legal and regulatory risks. It's not left to chance. A lot of people actually use these kind of policies to help recruit trustees as well. As we know, it's difficult to recruit trustees. And what we find is a lot of charities or CICs promote the fact that they've invested in a solid management liability product to protect the individual trustees. And it could be used as part of a recruitment tool. It also helps people within your organization when they do get there to fulfill their roles successfully, or feel that they've got some support, because sometimes it can be quite isolating in these roles for a charitable organization, because it can feel sometimes like the world's on your shoulders a little bit, trying to put things in place. Things whereby you maybe have agreed to do a role, but you maybe feel a bit out of your depth with some parts of it, and this would certainly give you access to a support mechanism. It certainly helps you fulfill commitments to SF&G, especially going for that green care quality mark. Okay, so the green care quality mark is an ongoing process. And the idea of this product really is that it would help the task of going through the process much easier, in terms of you can definitely go through the list and identify what's not in place and what you need in place, and how then we can structure some support around that with the use of the law firm. There's lots of topics they can advise on, and yeah, I'm sure it would support with the green care quality mark application process. So like I said at the start, we've worked with social farms and gardens for a number of years now, and we do genuinely feel we've got, you know, a unique offering in terms of the products we've got access to and the support that we can provide via the products. And it's just a case of having a conversation with us, really. I think that's what we try and do more than other brokers, is speak to clients to try and find out not just what their concerns insurance-wise are, but equally, is there anything we can support with that they are going through? And products like Rural Protect certainly help with that. Home Safely is something else. We do have a team that works with commercial farmers, and we all know it's been widely reported in the news how dangerous the farming industry is for accidents and incidents. Home Safely is an online tool to help farmers stay safe. It's worth checking out and having a look, because you will certainly find some of what Denise has been talking about on the app. And I know a lot of Social Farms and Gardens members aren't big commercial farmers and necessarily have the same machinery, but there are things on there which you might find of interest and be able to take bits and pieces from it. Okay, and this is the McClarrons team. So hopefully, if you look back at the slides and you're speaking to one of us on the phone, you can put a face to a name when you're speaking to us. But the team's been developing for 10 plus years now. It's been 13 actually. I think I need to update that. Trying to come up with unique propositions for certain market segments, and I'm happy to say with Social Farms and Gardens members, I think we've got a really good offering. So. How we work. So like I've mentioned at the start, really, you know, it's asking the questions, trying to build relationships, long-term relationships with clients so we can help support them. Communication is key to us, and finding the right solutions, and equally making sure you've got that documentation, that evidence once you have taken out a policy. We do have an in-house claims team as well. Again, if you've got an insurance policy with another broker and they've got a claims team, that could be another resource for you to contact for information, help, and advice. If you have had a near miss in terms of an accident, you might be able to run that scenario past the claims team and ask, what, you know, if there was a claim that came in, what would I need in place? You know, what would I need to show for an insurer to hopefully defend us in that situation? But it's really important that we invest in a claims team at McClarrons to help support clients if it does go wrong.
Right. Thank you for that. There isn't, apart from contact details, so that's the only last slide that I've got. So now we can, have there been any questions that have been put in the comments that we can go through, Alison?
Nothing, just to say, obviously we'll share slides, and we will be some of the documents that have been referenced to,
Yes.
particularly the kind of simple risk assessment. We'll be sharing that. So
yeah, we have a document about the templates for a number of things that we send out for Green Care Quality Mark. and also our safeguarding pointers. So a list of having reviewed about nearly 100 applications now for the Green Care Quality Mark. We've seen a number of things which regularly come up, and we have put those as a sort of pointers document that people can have a look at when they're reviewing their safeguarding policy before it comes in. Some of those things obviously I mentioned as we're going through, but the document does cover a few of the other things. So has anybody else got any questions they have at this stage that they'd like to ask whilst people here, or other advice that people have come across of things that they've had to put in place that they might be able to share with other people? Alison's got
so and so something I think that I found quite useful actually is the kind of process for doing some of this work. So obviously the people here are kind of the kind of champions, I suppose, of the paperwork and knowing that it's got to happen. But actually, if you're able to bring members of your group along with it, in actually making sure that it's not just a tick box exercise, but that actually this is enacted and this means that your organisation is safer, and that in terms of like safeguarding things, you're actually understanding the needs of the people and therefore why you need those safeguarding things in place, and then it's happening. So kind of having this all as an embedded part of how your organization operates, and to do it in a very kind of co-designed way, it alleviates some of the stress, and makes it a little bit more fun potentially, but also helps you to address some of those unique points that are important to your organization. So just kind of encourage people to not think of it as something that's an add-on or as something that sits aside that has to be done by someone on a computer on an evening, but something that's done as part of the activities within the group.
And I think building on that, one of the good things of trying to discuss is near misses, because although it sounds quite a scary thing, and if you are asking people to sort of highlight near misses, there's people might be a bit worried about coming forward. But if you develop an ethos that people can come forward and go, "Ooh, this nearly happened," but do it in a way that they, it doesn't feel scary to them, that's a good way of finding things that may need to be either included in a site risk assessment or something like that. And if you do that as part of your regular discussions with people, it doesn't become an issue when people need to discuss it, because they've seen other people discuss it and bring things forward. And if they can see that the idea that they've come through of, oh gosh, that nearly happened, and then see that the organization ends up putting something in place so that actually it doesn't happen on another occasion, they can see that the information that they're giving is helping build a better place. But if you invite discussions, have that in a sort of a format that isn't scary for people, I think you'll find that a lot more people will come through and give advice and give options and give suggestions of how to perhaps improve the safety on site. Has anybody else got any experience of having to do this, or any other hints and tips that made it a slightly easier task? Nina, you've just put your hand up.
Yes, I have to do, as everybody is supposed to do, a 2-year biannual fire safety risk assessment, and all the fire equipment in our premises is checked on 6-monthly or annual basis. And when the chap came in July, he pointed out to me that under the latest fire regulations, you have to have covers on your fire alarms. He said, no, you're not going to be hauled over the coals because you haven't got them, because our building's now been up since 2009. But when I thought about it, it was very sensible, because we have the fire alarms that you could push at a height that any child from about the age of 3 upwards could reach. And children going along can easily just push things because they happen to be passing it, not because they want to set off the alarm, but that's what would happen. So I'm in the midst of and he said, you don't have to have all your fire alarms in place. You've just got to get covers that fit over them, which is actually a very sensible thing. So I'm in the midst of sourcing where I get 3 of those to put on them so that they are, in a sense, childproof, and they're also meeting the latest regulations. And in fact, I was in a fairly modern university building just recently, and because of this I looked, and yes, all theirs had got covers on.
Yeah.
So it's just something to think about.
Yeah, there's all these things that, as I said, that that change, and if it isn't your day-to-day stuff, you might miss. I mean, I know that when I was working in the farm environment, the thing that I found is that the fire extinguishers and that just used to get covered in dust and hay, chaff and things like that. So because I'd got a monthly check sheet, to walk around and check the signage and check that, I included dusting the fire extinguishers and things like that, and it was quite a good it became a good activity actually, that we used to go round and make sure signs hadn't perished in the sunshine and split and things like that. But it also then, when we spoke to our insurance company, the fact that we had got that regular check of these things around, and it was just a tick box that we used to tick and then sign at the bottom, it showed that we were regularly checking that these things were in place, so that if something did go wrong, then we could say, well, we know that it was all in place at such and such a date. So again, that is a good mechanism for things that aren't necessarily things that you do check every day.
Another one on that actually is, I did put it in the chat box about, you have to every 5 years have your fixed wire testing. In other words, not your portable appliances, because you're a building that is open to the sort of the public, or it might, in many cases it is actually open to the public. We are only organised visits, but nevertheless that counts as public. So I'm that is now set up. It's actually happening in November for the next 5 yearly check. But the last time it was done, the electricians pointed out to me that you were supposed to check your emergency lighting every 2 months. So I've now got that on the checklist of things you have to do every month or every 2 months or every 6 months, checking your emergency lighting system. You don't need to get somebody else in to do it. You just have it on, like you dust the covers of things. It's another thing you add on that list to do. Yeah.
And these things they do, and I guess when it might be that there's different people doing it each month, if you have got this sort of checklist, and then you've got the idea that things don't get missed. And as you said, if somebody comes in with a fresh set of eyes, and again, it's when you start asking your volunteers what their background are and what their skill sets are, you might be surprised at what you do find out there, that people can help with this. They may be coming along to help do some gardening, but actually their skill set is something that might be really useful. So make sure you capture this information when people come along. Do we have anything else, any other questions at this stage? As Alison said, we will be going through and sending back out when the recording is up on our YouTube, and sending you the slides, because as I said, because they're extracts from a lot of the HSE websites, they are quite wordy, but you'll be able to look through them then and see what the different requirements are. So Alison was just going to talk briefly about our next members gathering, which will be next month as well.
Yes, so it'll be, I think, the 3rd of October, so same time, same place, 4th of 4 till 5 p.m, and with the same Zoom link will work. And we're going to be looking at permaculture within a community growing setting, and permaculture is quite often seen as kind of a way of growing, but it is also about how your organization works and how you operate. So actually, embedding your paperwork into what you're doing as an organization as well, that different approach to doing that. So that's going to be led by one of our colleagues, Paul Jennings, who's a permaculture tutor, design tutor, and a recently qualified gardenizer as well. So all very exciting and putting your skills to the test. So yeah, hope you can join us for that. The registration's on our website, and will be out on social media as well.
Yeah, that one is there. So thank you, Jonathan, for coming along as well and giving us that information. We've got a copy of his presentation as well. Nina, have you got your hand up? I can't tell on my, no, okay. Is anybody else? Jane, yes.
Jane got, yeah.
Yeah, there was just a question at the bottom from Isabel. Do you have an example of your monthly checklist that Nina was talking about? And I think you mentioned, Denise.
I don't, because I don't work at that organisation anymore, but I'm sure if I contact them, they would probably let me have it because I wrote it in the first place. So I'll see whether I can find that one as well. And again, it's just about looking, going around your organisation. It's things like signage, checking that signage is still in place and that you've still got your fire assembly point and those sorts of things. They're the sort of things that are on it. But yes, I will have a look and see whether I can find a copy and then include that in the examples.
I'm sorry, I haven't got my video on. I can't understand why not, because I've tried. But I just wanted to ask her something else. One of the things that was on your first slide was about a legal responsibility to make sure that everybody has been communicated all these things. And that's something I struggle with, is what do other people do to make sure that they know and they've recorded that everybody has read these policies and been communicated all this stuff? Because
so I don't know if anybody else has got any examples, but when we did this, we had a sign for the safeguarding for the health and safety and things. We had a sign sheet at the end of the document. So that was when we had hard copies of the documents, and then people had to physically sign the document, and we kept that as a check sheet at the end to make sure that they proved it. You could ask them to drop you an email or something like that. I'm just trying to think, has anybody else got any samples of what they have done in that to prove?
I would say again, I would have literally said the same as you, have a checklist that you get people to sign. I have to admit that I'm in a very fortunate position because my school farm used to be under the safety staff of Birmingham City Council, and so they were very good when they were around to tell us what we should do and what we should have in place. Okay, we no longer have that umbrella over us, we're not with the City Council, but I would have thought that if anybody has got access to their local authority safety officers, and if you're getting any involvement with their schools or with youth centres or that sort of thing, they should be able to advise you to even things like having a checklist.
I actually went for my local local authority. I went to they were running a COSH risk assessment course for council workers, and I said, well, technically we are, because we aren't a county farm, but we take placements from your social care, and they allowed me to attend their health and safety course, their COSH course. So that's the sort of thing. I think Ian has put it in the comments, but also, yeah, on your staff induction, when they have to first sign, first read your original documents, again, at the end of that, we sent them away with a little booklet of the key documents they needed to read. And even when we started to send them back send them out electronically, they then had to send back a little sheet, just a one-pager, which they ticked which documents they had read and then signed that they had read it, and then we kept that on file. And then, as I said, most of the policies were updated annually, so you used to chase them around once a year to say, okay, can you now confirm that you've read that? And then I used to keep that one page on the records to say that they had said they had read it.
Yeah, I mean, we have the same, and it's straightforward on induction, and we have staff training records of it whenever I have anything face to face, and we also have online training records. That's simple enough, but it's all these policies. and they've got a sheet for themselves that they can physically tick off. But then you know, if you've got 15 volunteers and 6 staff, you know, it's actually quite onerous somehow to have something sending you back an email and having to go into a file and tick it off all the time. I just wondered if anybody had any software or anything that allowed them to tick it off if they've read it, and then you can see it, but not everybody else could see it.
Yeah, I'm not aware. Perhaps if we can put that out as one of the questions. That's what. Are you on our Social Farms Gardens private members group? Because that would be a good one to put out on that group, because you know, out of 3,000 members, I'm sure somebody has got a cost-effective way of doing that. But yeah, I would, if you aren't currently a member of that group, there was a link on our newsletter that went out earlier this week.
I think we are.
Yeah, that is a good sort of source of information, and putting that type of question on there. I'm sure you'll get quite a few responses for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's not any other questions, I can't see anybody's else hands raising. So thank you all for attending today. I hope that's been useful. I hope it's given you something to work from rather than just a blank sheet of paper. And hopefully then you'll join up for some of our other members gatherings, and put it in your diary for next month. And it's always the first Thursday of each month, and we will keep publicising what the different topics are as we go through. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for attending.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.